Well, aloha, good morning. Happy Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us here on Spotlight Hawaii. I'm Yunji Denise, joined by Ryan Clay Suji. And Ryan, we have a very special guest that we are so lucky to have joining us here this morning.
That's right. We're welcoming in Dr. Christina Kishimoto, of course, the superintendent for the Department of Education, to the conversation. She has joined our broadcasts in the past, and we always love having her on to get an update on what's happening in our schools. Joining us right now this morning is Dr. Kishimoto. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Yunji. Nice to see both of you again.
You know, we have so much to discuss and talk about, and clearly we want to get to some of the news that came out yesterday, including a statement by HST. But I think first we want to just start off by finding out and getting an update on what's happening in our schools. We know that there have been a lot of developments over the past week. We got word about commencement, about summer school as well. If you can sort of spend this first part just giving us an update on what's happening in our schools and when you think students will be able to resume and be in classroom full-time, if at all, this year.
Wow, so you left that really broad, Ryan, right? So you've given me a lot of latitude. There is so much going on right now. So third quarter started right after the kind of Christmas holidays as we went into January. And since January, so we ended third quarter with 12,000 students in person learning, everyone else on blended or distance learning. Since then, we've had several thousand additional students who have come back for in-person learning, especially kindergarten through fifth grade. We've also started conversations about what's going to happen for fourth quarter, knowing that collectively we want to have as many of our elementary students participate in in-person learning as they finish the year and transition into next year. We can go into more details on that as well. The other piece is modified in-person graduation. You don't know how excited we are all about this. Our students want this. Our families want this. Students who are graduating this year have had 2 years of interrupted school years. And, they lost all of that fourth quarter of last year. All of this year has been highly interrupted. And so for them to be able to come back in person and celebrate their, K through 12 experience and be able to go off with a final celebration together was really important to us. So we did approve by working with all 4 county mayors, police departments, transportation, governor's office, Department of Health, and we're all on the same page, ready to support this modified in-person graduation. It's not going to look like years past, but it is going to allow the students to come back together and have a great ceremony.
Well, what is it going to look like? Because I know last year we saw those drive-through graduations in different districts or different, I'm forgetting the word, but different schools making different, sort of accommodations. But what do you anticipate that actually looking like this time around?
So Yunji, we're still going to have some virtual graduations. We'll still have some drive-throughs. Each school is planning, with their student leaders, with their faculty. And so principals are leading that conversation. But we've broadened the scope of what's possible. So we did not allow for a third-party venue, for example. Schools can, in fact, go to a rental facility like a stadium and have 6 feet of social distancing, masking, which will allow for, all of the students to come back safely for this final celebration before they leave. We also are encouraging schools to limit the, who can attend. Some schools are planning to have only the students with the school staff attend and have the parents on virtually. And some schools are going to be able to have up to 2 parents or family members with each graduate. So they're all planning around these new kind of broadened constructs around the parameters for putting together the graduation ceremony.
We know that you mentioned off the top about elementary students returning to the classroom. What does it look like for those in middle and high school? What does the remainder of this calendar school year look like for them? Could we see more opportunities for students to be back into the classroom full time?
So let me start with elementary if I can, Ryan, because right after spring break is upon us, right? We're a week and a half away from spring break. So we're not saying that on March 22nd, all elementary schools are fully reopened. It is much easier to close down a school and do distance learning than to go the other way, because you have to change up all the services, put transportation back in place, have all the hires in place for support services and food services and everything else for in-person. What we are saying is that the elementary school principals are right now planning around how to maximize the number of students back on campus and identifying which schools are going to be able to fully reopen. So that's in progress. I've had great meetings with the elementary principals and the complex area superintendents, and we'll be rolling out more details shortly around this. For middle school and high school, we're asking all of them to start planning for greater numbers of students returning on campus, because they do have the capacity and the ability to basically roll this up. And that's been the most promising approach that we've been able to use to make sure that we're not rolling up, opening to greater numbers, and then needing to shut down. When we look at what other states have done where they rolled up too quickly, many of them had to shut down school and kind of restart the whole reopening plan. We haven't had to do that, which I think is great. It's allowed for kind of this stabilized way of doing this ramping up to our design. And that's really the approach we're going to continue to do. We also have new DOH guidance around all the scientific kind of learning, the science-based learning around the mitigation strategies for health and safety. So, at first, DOH guidance, the CDC guidance was kind of wipe everything down, maybe once an hour. Now they've learned so much more about this virus and saying this is really about the masking. It really has to do with the lungs. And so because of that, it's not about wiping everything down. It's making sure that masking is in place, making sure that we're still washing our hands regularly, that we are layering these mitigation strategies. So that allows us to think differently about how the classroom is set up and also how we can do transportation.
I want to bring in Stephanie's question here. She's got a couple of different things that she's asking. Considering the low virus rate statewide and here on Hawaii Island and the vaccine rollout to teachers, what barriers still remain to getting every student back in the classroom full time? So let's unpack that a little bit. What is the vaccine rollout to teachers, first of all? How many of our educators and also the support staff have actually gotten the vaccine, and what's the time frame on that? And what are the barriers once they are all vaccinated to getting everyone back in full time?
So we are really excited about where we are with vaccines, because we were initially told that it was going to be into late March before we were going to be able to get to actually where we are already. We have about 20,000 of our educators who have signed up for vaccines. Again, this is voluntary. At least half of our educators have already gotten their first vaccine. Almost every educator, if not every educator in Kauai who wanted the vaccine has been vaccinated, and every educator on Big Island who wanted the vaccine has gotten the first dose of the vaccine. So our biggest challenge is where our largest group is, which is here in Oahu, and we're rolling through that now. So for the last few weeks, we've been doing vaccinations at LCC, and they've been a great partner with us to make this happen. And so we just released another number of appointments for the second dose of vaccines for those who had their first dose 3 or 4 weeks ago. So we're rolling through this quickly. We're really excited about where we are.
Of course, we want to also bring up some of the comments that were made yesterday by the teachers union, HSTA, and their comments about your leadership during this time. They say that there has been a lack of communication coming from you and the department. Wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to any of the criticism that you have received during this time and your leadership through COVID-19.
So Ryan, I'm going to respectfully say that I'm not going to comment on these statements being made right now. This is about all hands on deck right now. This is about keeping our eyes on the prize. We have been meeting for the last 2 weeks about what it's going to take to do a fourth quarter next level of significant reopening. Everyone's focused on that. Everyone's eyes are on that. This is about kids and what they need. This is about families and what they need in terms of bringing hope back to the community. And I think my reacting to this right now was a distraction, and I'm not going to be caught up in the distraction. I need everyone really focused on having our students get what they need. We have surveys that show the students are increasingly sad. We have surveys that show the students' learning has been highly disrupted, and so they're not doing as well at this point in the year. We have surveys and feedback from families saying they really need us to continue to look at greater reopening. And so we're talking about the academic wellness of our students, the social emotional wellness, the mental health wellness of our kids, their happiness and joy. And that's what we need to be focused on, and that's what we're doing. I will mention there was a great meeting that was held twice already. Speaker Psyche, Senator Schatz, DOH leadership, DOE leadership, and leadership from HGEA, HSTA, UPW. We all came together 2 Fridays ago, and then 1 Friday ago, we came back together to have a collective, cohesive call to action to say, what's this next level of work? Let's do this together. And that's what I'm going to stay focused on. That's what we said we were going to do. And that's where I am.
I respect your obviously not commenting, but I do want to ask, so your contract is coming up. Do you hope to stay? Do you hope to continue?
Again, I'm not going to comment on that right now. I think there are conversations that have to be had first before I make any public comment about that matter. The board is having conversations about that starting tomorrow, and tomorrow will be the first of that conversation. So we haven't even started the process yet of conversation. And so I don't want to comment until we've started that process.
You know, when we look at just how teachers and schools are getting information and the communication lines between the department and the schools, do you feel that there has been adequate communication? What steps have you taken in the department to really engage them, and especially moving forward with so much changing? I mean, we almost seem like we're getting a new release from the department, every day with new updates. How is that being facilitated through and communicated to the school level to ensure that they are on the same page, being that is something that they have expressed some frustration over?
Yeah, so it's a great question. We're leading in a time of crisis, which is a familiar term. But I would call it leading in a time partly of insanity. I mean, this just destabilization, lots of pressure to make decisions quick, but knowing that we have safe guidelines around health and safety we have to adhere to. This is a health pandemic. This is not an easy matter. Most people leading have never led through a health pandemic. There is a lot of confusion that will happen. This is hard work, right? This is about having our sleeves rolled up the entire time to say what works, what doesn't work. When something didn't work, let's go back to the table, let's regroup, let's make another decision. That's what it's been like for a year, nonstop for everyone. And for people to say that they feel like they haven't been communicated enough with, that they feel frustrated, that they feel a little fearful, that's expected. What we've done is keep changing how we're communicating. I get a lot of feedback from my leadership team. I appreciate that feedback. We keep changing how we meet, but this is a constant, week by week, constant meeting, trying to make decisions that are the best decisions we can make with the information we have, knowing that we know more today about this pandemic than we did when we started and we were in this state of confusion, and we still don't know everything that we need to about what this is going to mean, looking forward, but making the best decisions possible. And I've remained flexible about that communications, whether it's, I have never turned down a media invitation. I'm on the media answering as best as possible. We have our own internal communications. We have memos that go out constantly. The more we communicate, the more questions there are. And that's a good thing, because we have to keep making the best decisions possible, because this is a health and safety matter. And it's also an accountability matter around the quality of education we can provide during this time period.
Autumn is a parent. She's got a question. Says, currently my child is in an elementary classroom with 10 kids maximum. Will classroom sizes get larger? If so, what support, like supplies or staffing, will teachers get and staff get to accommodate the increase? We know that a lot of schools were already facing overcrowding before the pandemic, and now you have mandates, or at least direction from CDC in terms of how far apart kids should be. How do you, welcome all these kids back while still maintaining the safety, when it comes to COVID?
Yunji, this is a great question. It's also connected to this issue of the communication around the guidance. The guidance from CDC and DOH has always allowed for example, 6 feet of social distancing when possible. We have taken a strict kind of look at 6 feet of social distancing, and we haven't looked at when possible, right? We have stayed to that, which means that less students can come back to class. Now that the science says, look, we've had enough time to see how hospitals run and other facilities and other working groups have run, or employee groups have run with less than 6 feet of social distancing and have had no transmission of the disease in some of those areas. We know that you can have less than 6 feet of social distancing, but layer on masking is absolutely mandatory, making sure you're keeping your hands clean, taking mask breaks, and so forth. And so there's new guidance around how to think about the guidance, right? It's not that the guidance indicators have changed, it's that the science behind it is clearer. And so now, the guidance we've received from DOH is that we can bring classes fully back into classrooms. But what's a non-negotiable is the masking, the ventilation of air, continue to wash your hands, take breaks and allow kids to get fresh air and adults to get fresh air as well. And it's that layering. And so now that we know we can have full classrooms back, we have to kind of lead back up into that, because we also have to educate the community about the new science. And we can't do that alone, because DOE talking about the science doesn't feel like the right body of experts. It's really DOH and the scientific community, CDC, folks like the Lieutenant Governor and the work he does with hospitals is really helpful in providing new education around the new information we've gotten to really change our parameters for bringing more kids back into the classroom beyond that classroom of 10 that our parent is asking about.
A few weeks ago, we had some of the advocates for getting our students back into on the playing field and being able to participate in athletic competition. During this time, as you are restructuring and trying to figure out how to bring students in, there has been an outcry for parents saying that they want their students to be able to compete again. What sort of update can you give us on where you folks are at with determining how best to allow some sort of athletic competition with happening in our schools?
Yes, and we're going into fourth quarter very shortly here. So, time is passing very quickly for, getting back into competitive sports. Our athletic leagues are making decisions right now around whether they will encourage and allow for the leagues to come back together for competition. What the DOE is doing, and those are the leagues that make that decision independently, and then they meet with me around their decision. What the DOE is doing is we are opening up our fields, our workout rooms, our weight rooms for conditioning. So we are going to be issuing a statement by the end of this week, telling our high schools and our middle schools they can start coming back together to do weight training, conditioning, practice. They can use the field space to do this, and they can also use the spaces in the building to do this. And this is to make sure that our student athletes can continue to do their conditioning work, which is really important, but also that our athletes who are seniors can also come back and they can document their conditioning. A lot of them have to submit, some kind of videotape or some video of what they are doing and their conditioning work as they apply to colleges and college scholarships related to athletes. And so we want to support them as they're doing that. And so all of our coaches and athletic team, our athletic staff will be working with our student athletes and putting a plan together to start bringing them back for this kind of work.
As you go through and start looking at planning, let's talk a little bit about summer school. What do you anticipate being available then? I think that a lot of parents who may not normally send their kid to summer school do feel like they might need some more in-classroom time because they've had so much time at home. And also there are programs like Summer Fun and different things that happen on those campuses. So what's the outlook for that?
Yeah, and you're right about that end of the summer fun part of this as well. That socialization is important. Our families are looking for options for the summer, and they're also looking for kids to get their academic practice. And so last summer in 2020, we increased the number of students participating from previous years, and so we broadened our summer offerings. We had 21,000 students participate, which is just fantastic. For this year, we're planning up for that as well, so that we have options that include not only the academics, but also some of the fun, engaging, INA-based, field trip kind of fun learning activities, and then fun activities just out in the field, playing sports, socialization time for kids to get together and do fun projects together. So we're going to be rolling that out. The Board of Education still has to approve the funding that I am authorized to use for this. And so we're planning at the scale at least of last year, and actually we're trying to get even larger than last year with offerings. And I'll be taking to the board a proposal for the funding that I need behind this.
Early on in this pandemic, we had talked, one of the major focuses was making sure that meals were available to students. And for those who really rely on the meals that are served in schools to just help sustain them throughout just the day. What can you tell us about where you are at right now with those meal programs? Because we saw these pop-ups of meals being delivered for those who are not learning in person as schools were closed. But is that still going on? And what kind of update can you provide to us on what's happening with feeding students during this time?
Thanks for the question. We are often noted, the Department of Education, as the largest restaurant in Hawaii. We provide significant food preparation, manage significant numbers of kitchens across all of our schools throughout the islands, and our important source of feeding our children in this state. And we also provide summer feed, which includes students who are not part of the public school system. So it's any student can come and participate in that. So it's quite an operation. We are continuing to feed students. We continue to change our model based on the number of students coming out to pick up their meals. We saw a huge drop in the beginning of the school year. And the feedback we got is parents were struggling with the online learning, trying to figure out their own work schedule, and then trying to figure out how to come in the middle of the day to a site to pick up a meal, and actually have to come twice, one for breakfast, one for lunch, another time for lunch. And so based on the feedback, we've adjusted. And now when families come to pick up their child's meal, they can get breakfast and lunch at the same time, so they don't have to come back twice. And for those in really isolated rural areas, we've made adjustments for multiple meals, bringing meals out into the communities, and lots of adjustments as we've gone along throughout the year. And so the number of participants has almost tripled since the end of last semester. I'm really pleased that it's going up. It's still not at the numbers we were in a regular school year. And so we continue to push out meals in new ways to really accommodate for what that a work life is for our adults right now who are trying to manage between schooling at home and trying to get to work.
I know one of the things that you've been also focused on is a commitment you made early on to upgrade the financial management system of the department. Can you tell us where that is right now?
Yeah, so thanks for asking about that. It's one of those things that we have just kept on. We decided that we were not going to slow down on the replacement of our financial management system. It crashed over a year ago. It was very disruptive. We couldn't pay out any of our bills. This is a system that is more than 30 years old. It is the most antiquated system I've had to deal with. It's a system that I was working in another organization in the business sector, actually closing out in the 1980s, and we're still using it here in Hawaii. And so this is one of those non-negotiable for me. We needed to modernize the system because we need to be able to issue payments quickly to our partners and vendors. We also need to be able to produce reports in a much more sophisticated way about our finances. And our schools need to have a system that's much more sophisticated to do the work they do to manage their school-based budgets. So our go live date is for July. It's an aggressive timeline, but it is a necessary timeline. And I have a great team here in the DOE with partners at ETS, partners in the Comptroller's Office, partners at UH, who have all come together to support us to make sure that we can make this deadline of July to go live with this new system.
Wow, antiquated systems is not is something that we've heard quite a lot over the past few months, and you're not alone in dealing with that in the department. But great to hear that's moving forward. In speaking of the finances overall of the department, you know, there was the idea floated around by the governor earlier this year about possible furlough of teachers. We know that has since been scaled back because of the recent funding that has been allocated from Congress through the different and various models of the CARES Act. What can you tell us about the overall financial stability of the department during this time, knowing that you are getting this influx of support from Congress, but also moving forward, how do you manage through that, knowing that there could be some potential shortfalls later?
So Ryan, there is so much has happened on this front. I'm going to try to figure out how to summarize this. So we started out the school year or the session with a $264 million shortfall in our base budget that was going to completely destabilize our system. We were able to show what the impact would be. Governor's office the governor put back $123 million back into the base after the Council of Revenues projected something more positive for the state in terms of future revenues. That's helped to stabilize our schools for planning for next year. We still have a shortfall for this current year of about $70 to $80 million to pay just current bills. We got the $186 million from the federal government that allows us through this relief funds to pay current bills, which is extremely helpful. The forward planning is still a challenge. We have still a remaining $141 million shortfall for next year and for the year after. We recently we've had lots of conversations with legislators, and I appreciate those conversations. We had a meeting yesterday with Chair Luke on the House side, and Representative Yamashita as well. And we went through our special funds. They're going through everyone's special funds. I appreciate their turning over every rock to say, where's the money? Where is their flexibility for temporarily pulling back some money to stabilize the state as new potential money comes from the federal government? We're watching the decision by Congress right now that may bring in an additional $440 million to the Department of Education before the school year is out. And that's part of the complete package of stabilizing this year and stabilizing the next 2 years of education, and will go a long way for putting us in a good place.
You know, our time is running out, but I want to give Cyrus the last question because I think it's a great one. He just says, how do you see the public schools moving forward, knowing what you know now about the pandemic? And what's your advice to students and parents on how to move forward to maximize their learning experience? You know, we know that it's not going to be school the way we're used to, and that there might be some adjustments that they have to make. So just on a broad level, you know, if you could answer Cyrus's question.
So thank you, Cyrus, for the question. I want to say that I want to give a lot of credit to our students for their resiliency and also how innovative they've been in working with their teachers, working with their principals, working at schools, or just working from home, figuring out, where they're engaging. Our kids are very resilient. That being said, the school system itself needs to ensure that kids are getting what they need to get academically to get ready for next year. I would encourage students and parents to fully take advantage of the summer offerings. We're looking at everything from, students who need extra time on current work, but also allowing students to advance their credits and jump ahead of for next school year. And so certainly take advantage of that. I'm asking parents and students to keep working with your principals at the school site for these next levels of school reopening. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of folks, working together cohesively, and what works best for you as a family as situations change is important for us to know, especially at the school site, to really understand how we can keep designing around this. One of the biggest challenges for us is as new information comes out, is the constant change on the design. And that's a challenge not only for the teacher in the classroom, but for the principal who's managing it, but also for the family who, every design we put out is not going to be what every family needs. And yet we have to manage a number of designs that's reasonable to be able to do it well, right? We have a fixed number of staff and we have a fixed budget that we're working within. And our parents and our students are important partners with our teachers and principals at the school site and our staff to make this work well.
All right. Well, Dr. Kishimoto, thank you so much. We know that you have obviously a lot on your hands and a full plate with everything that you're managing, but we appreciate you taking the questions from our viewers and updating us on what's happening in our schools this morning. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Thank you to both of you.
Thank you so much. Well, Ryan, great to hear from her. And, it does sound like elementary school students, by and large, will have an opportunity to get back into the classroom after spring break, which, as she noted, is just a week and a half away. But they are having to pivot in some really big ways and make things available. Nice to hear also that student athletes are going to start to be allowed back on campus to do some training and conditioning. It's up to the leagues, as she said, whether or not they'll actually be able to play against each other, but at least to get to be together and to practice and to have access to those facilities will be very important for a lot of those students.
And we did hear that really request and concern by some of the advocates that wanted to get students back involved in athletics was just allowing them the opportunity to have the resources of a weight room and coaching experience. And so that is, I'm sure, much appreciated news that will be, again, coming down. She said later this week they will have an official announcement that will be coming out by the department about that. We also got an update on the budget, and sounds like while there is and there has been support that has come down from the federal level, there still is some concern moving forward into next year about how the DOE will continue to find ways to fill those budget holes that has been created because of this pandemic. And a lot will be further decided on as we continue to monitor what's happening in Washington, D.C. And if further funding will come down to help assist the specific areas and needs of the education system here in Hawaii.
Yeah, and one really important note, just if you know families that are struggling, that she did say that the DOE does have meals available, meals to go, breakfast and lunch together in one package. You don't necessarily have to go to the school that is your district, that is the school that your student is attached to. And it's just very important to know that those resources are out there. We hear from a lot of you, especially, when we host these unemployment shows, about just how many financial struggles folks are having. And this is a really important resource to make sure that our students do get the access to nutrition that they're entitled to.
I know when you think about it at times, you often think about the DOE and just what happens in the classroom, but there are so many other components that happen that the department is having to manage during this time. We got an update about their financial modernization and how they are trying to incorporate some of that as well. So there's a lot of things that are happening at the department. We also heard her statements about some of the criticism that she received directly yesterday from the HSTA, saying that she is focusing on getting students back into the classroom during this time, during COVID-19, and anything else would be a distraction. And she seems very focused on making sure that that remains the narrative for the department moving forward.
Yeah, and also lastly, really good to hear about all the teachers that have had and administrators that have had access to the vaccine. It sounds like by and large that's working really well, and the majority of those folks have at least gotten one shot. So that is very good news. It hopefully will make people feel more comfortable as they have to head back into the classroom.
So we're looking forward to more conversations that will happen on this programming. On Friday, we will be joined by what we're calling maybe a Citizens United, where citizens have come together to help others in our community. We'll be speaking to two individuals who manage the Facebook unemployment helpline, if you will. They provide resources and information for those who have gone through this unemployment crisis that we are experiencing, with many still waiting. We'll be talking to them about some of the stories that they're hearing, about what advice they can provide to those that are currently still in the queue and waiting for some sort of communication and relief in the unemployment side. And we'll also be talking to another group of individuals that have been active during this time.
Yeah, Angela Keene is going to join us in the second half of the show. She runs the Quarantine Couple Breakers Facebook page, and they are out there very vigilant about making sure that people are not breaking quarantine. The last time she was on here, she was telling us about how her group works with the Attorney General's office and actually helps to get people arrested and in some cases sent back to the mainland for breaking quarantine. And then also they've been very now focused on making sure that everyone is following the mask mandate. So we'll be getting an update from her, and we know that she has been working with the legislature as they try to push through bills to make the mask mandate enforceable in a different way, not misdemeanor, but a simple fine. So she's working on that legislation, and we'll be talking with her about that.
Yeah, we're looking forward to another great month of guests. We will, of course, have continue to bring on guests that you've been used to seeing on here, like the governor and like the mayor, as well as the lieutenant governor. But we'll also be adding in a few other topics. We'll be speaking next week to the interim director of the of HART, Laurie Kahikina, who will give us an update on the rail project. We'll also be hearing from some of the stars of Finding Ohana, the Netflix show, hearing their take on their experience and what it's like to represent Hawaii on a worldwide level, and how the film industry continues to grow here in the island. So a lot of topics and conversations that we hope to spotlight right here on this program. We certainly thank you for being a part of this conversation, and we'll see you right back here on Friday at 10:30. Aloha.
Aloha.